You can pick the perfect keyword, build the perfect page, climb to the top of Google for it, and a buyer can still ask ChatGPT for the best option and never hear your name. And the reason is simpler than it sounds, because Google was matching your keyword while the AI is answering the person's intent. Those used to be the same game, where the words someone typed and the words on your page lined up, and that's how you won. But an AI engine doesn't line up words anymore. It works out what the person is after and writes them an answer, and your keyword ranking has almost nothing to do with whether your name is in it. So today I want to give you the simplest, honest way to hold these two side by side. SEO is keyword focused and AEO is intent focused. And once that clicks, everything you need to do differently falls right out of it. So let me put the whole difference in one line before we go deeper. SEO is keyword focused, which means you pick the exact words people type into Google and you build a page to rank for those words. AEO is intent focused, which means you make sure your brand is the answer to what the person wants, no matter how they happen to phrase it. One is about matching the words, the other is about satisfying the intent behind them. And that single move from keywords to intent is where every change we're about to cover comes from. So underneath, the mechanism is what makes intent so different from a keyword. Google's job for years was to match. It looked at the words in your page and the words in the search, found the closest fit, and ranked those pages in order. An AI engine skips that. It reads the meaning behind the question, works out what the person is trying to do, and then composes one answer out of the handful of sources it already trusts. So the same intent can show up in 100 different wordings and still land on the same few names. You're no longer competing to own a keyword, you're competing to be the answer the engine gives to an intent. And that turns out to be a very different thing to optimize for. It helps to picture what an intent looks like next to a keyword. The old way, someone typed a tight phrase like best project management software, and you built a page aimed at those exact words. Now that same person opens an AI and says something messier and more human, like my 5-person team keeps missing deadlines, what should we use? Which never lines up with a keyword cleanly. The engine reads the goal underneath that, a small team trying to stop missing deadlines, and answers it, pulling names from the sources it trusts. So instead of optimizing for the phrase, you're making sure your brand fits the goal behind a dozen different phrasings. And before anyone declares SEO dead over this, that's the wrong read. Keywords still drive an enormous amount of traffic because Google still handles around 8.5 billion searches a day. But ChatGPT alone has roughly 900 million people using it every week. And a lot of them now ask it who to go with instead of scrolling a results page. So your buyers are working both sides in the same afternoon, typing keywords into Google and describing their intent to an AI. Which means the real job now is to serve both, the keyword and the intent behind it. The keyword work you've done still counts. It stops being the whole game. It also helps to know the keyword side is shrinking on its own. Google now answers a lot of searches right on the results page with its AI overview, so the person reads the summary and never clicks down to anyone's site. Depending on the query and the industry, that's been cutting click-through rates by somewhere between 15 and 60%. So even when you win the keyword, you win fewer of the clicks it used to bring. The intent is still there. The buyer still wants an answer. It's the click that's quietly disappearing. So learning to show up in the answer itself is becoming the main way to catch that intent. So let's walk through what changes once you start optimizing for intent instead of a keyword. There are 4 shifts, and each one is something you can act on. So this is the practical part. The first shift is what winning even means. Because ranking for a term and being the answer are not the same. There's a mention where the engine names you in the answer, and there's a citation where it links a real page as the source for what it said. A mention means the model has heard of you, while a citation means it found a page it trusts enough to point at, and the citation is what carries the weight. The engine is far more willing to recommend a name it can back with a real source than one it's repeating from memory. So a citation is what turns awareness into a real recommendation. In our own research, one project management tool got mentioned about 13 times across the engines and earned 0 citations over 8 straight cycles, while its competitors got cited every time. So it was clearly known and still wasn't the answer, because being remembered and being recommended are 2 different things. The second shift is where your authority comes from, and it moves off your own site. With keywords, authority was mostly backlinks pointing back at you. With intent, the engine builds its answer from the sources it trusts to be right. The review sites like G2 and Capterra, the Reddit threads, the editorial roundups, the comparison articles. Across more than 7,000 citation links in our research, the large majority pointed at third-party pages rather than brand sites. And about 85% of the time a brand shows up in an answer, it's writing in on someone else's page. It goes further because ChatGPT only runs a live web search on about a third of questions. So most of the time it's answering from what it picked up in training, long before the question got asked. So serving the intent means being present in the places the engine already trusts, well ahead of time. And it's worth knowing why the engine leans on other people's pages over yours. When your own site calls you the best option, the model reads that as marketing and quietly discounts it. When a review site or a Reddit thread says the same thing, it lands as an outside opinion from someone with nothing to sell, and the engine trusts that far more. It would rather repeat a name a stranger vouched for than one you only vouched for yourself. So the goal shifts from shouting louder on your own pages to becoming the brand other people keep bringing up on their own. That said, your own site still has one move that works. The page that tends to get cited is the honest comparison, the one that covers the whole landscape, names your competitors, includes real pricing, and gives a straight assessment. The engines read a page like that as editorial rather than a sales pitch, so they'll quote it even though it lives on your domain. And off your site, the play is concrete. You find the roundups and threads the engines already pull from for your category, and you make sure your brand earns a place in them. That's the authority work now, showing up credibly where other people are already being read. The third shift is the shape of the content, and this is the part you fully control. A keyword page could take its time, run 2,000 words, and save the point for the end. An intent-driven engine doesn't read that way. It grabs the first couple of sentences under a heading and quotes them, so a point buried in paragraph 8 gets skipped. When we looked at what gets pulled, sections of about 120 to 180 words, each opening with a direct answer, earned around 70% more citations than long, unstructured blocks. And content that fully answers the question on its own, without sending the engine hunting for more, was over 4 times more likely to be cited. So you lead with the answer, in plain words, right where the engine can reach it. Take 2 pages answering the same intent, like the best accounting tool for a small business. One opens by naming a clear pick and the reason in its first 2 lines, so the engine can lift the answer in one grab. The other has the same conclusion 10 paragraphs down under a long windup, so the engine has to dig, and usually it gives up and grabs an easier source. Same facts, same brand, and only one is built so the answer can use it. So a lot of serving intent is moving the answer to the top and saying it plainly. The fourth shift is how you measure it, and it breaks the keyword rank habit hard. With a keyword, you check a position. It sits there, you track it, and it holds for weeks. Intent answers don't sit still. When we asked the engines the same buying question week after week, they agreed on a single top pick only about half the time, and the same engine would change its own answer from one week to the next. They each read a different set of sources too, so you can be the clear winner in one engine and missing from another. So one check on one engine on one day tells you almost nothing. You track it the way it behaves, across several engines and on a repeat schedule, the way you'd never judge a rank from a single refresh. And what you're tracking stops being a single number. Instead of one keyword position, you're looking at whether you get mentioned, whether you get cited, where you sit in the order, how the engine describes you, and how many engines show you it all. Those 5, mention, citation, position, sentiment, and coverage, are the new version of a rank, and together they tell a much fuller story than a single position ever did. It's a bit more to watch, but it's the honest picture of how you're showing up, and freshness turns into part of the job. A keyword page could hold its spot for a year untouched. AI engines lean toward recent material, and in our data the pages refreshed in the last few months pulled noticeably more citations than the ones left to sit. So an intent page goes stale in weeks, not years, which means the work is no longer write it once and leave it. It becomes a habit of keeping the important pages current, something keyword work never demanded. Now here's the part the SEO is dead crowd misses. A lot of the foundation carries straight over. Clear, useful content wins in both, and a brand that publishes widely about its topic earns trust with Google and with the AI models at once. Clean structure and schema help both, and the keyword authority you've built is the platform intent optimization stands on, because an established site is far easier for an engine to trust than one starting cold. So AEO is not SEO with a new name. The mechanics are different, but it doesn't replace SEO either. Intent sits on top of the keyword foundation, not in place of it, and the two feed each other once both are running. A page that ranks well for a keyword builds the authority that makes an engine more willing to cite it for the intent. And when an engine names your brand in an answer, people go and search that name on Google, which sends you traffic and lifts the ranking. So each side quietly strengthens the other. And that's the real case for doing both, because the work you put into one keeps paying off in the other. It's also why waiting costs more than it looks. Engines build their picture of a category over time, so the brands that keep showing up in answers today are building a citation history that makes them harder to dislodge tomorrow. Start 6 months from now, and you're not only behind, you're up against rivals who've already taught the engines to trust them for that intent. It's the same story as the early days of SEO, where the brands that moved first on keywords built an edge latecomers spent years chasing. The window is open now, and it narrows every time a competitor gets there first. So here's how to see your own gap this week, for free. Take one real intent, a question a buyer would ask to find someone like you. And for a fuller view, write down the handful of questions your customers ask before they buy, in their words, not your category name. Do the keyword check first, search it on Google, and see where you land. Then do the intent check. Put that same question to ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and Grok, one at a time, and watch what comes back. See whether your brand is named, where you sit in the order, and then ask each engine to show its sources, so you can see which pages it leaned on. The gap between where you rank and whether your name even appears is your AEO problem in one view. And those sources it shows you are the exact pages you need to get into. From there, the plan is mostly keep and add rather than rip and replace. You keep the keyword fundamentals that drive real traffic, the technical health, the terms that convert, and you add the intent layer, answer first structure on your key pages, an honest comparison page, a real presence in the third-party sources the engines read, and a habit of refreshing what matters. A sane split is something like 60 to 70% on content that serves both at once, 20 to 30% on the intent-specific work like Reddit and FAQ pages and refreshes, and the last 10% on pure keyword upkeep. Then you let your own numbers move it from there. Now that intent check, across 4 engines with the sources written down, is tedious to run by hand every couple of weeks. That's the part a tool like Loudmink handles for you, a rank tracker for AI answers, checking each engine on a schedule and showing which sources they pulled and whether you showed up. But by hand or automated, the lever is the same. You get your brand into the sources the engines trust, in a form that's easy to quote, you keep it current, and you measure it across engines over time. SEO gets you found for the keyword, and AEO makes you the answer to the intent. In 2026, you want both. So if you'd like to see where you stand on the AI side right now, run a free scan over at loudmink.ai and find out which answers you're already in. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.